A self-taught black engineer named Granville Woods won against Thomas Edison in federal court. Not once, but twice. Yet most Americans have never heard his name. In 1888, a Cincinnati federal court ruled that Woods, not Edison, invented the electric railway telegraph system. The patent for the synchronous multiplex railway telegraph belonged to Granville Woods, and the ruling was final. He was 32 years old, unknown and unconnected. Granville Taylor Woods was born in Columbus, Ohio, in 1856. He grew up in a city that was technically free but practically hostile. Formal engineering schools did not accept black students in the 1870s. Woods taught himself. He worked in a machine shop, then on railroads, then in a steel rolling mill. He was absorbing how things worked from the inside out. By his mid-20s, he had started filing patents. Electrical railways, telephone systems, electrical distribution. He worked in a rented workshop with no institutional backing, no university behind him, no corporate laboratory, no government grant. Just the work, the wire, the diagrams on a wooden table. His hands moved constantly between them, coat on against the cold. The 1880s were a gold rush for electrical patents. Edison, Tesla, Westinghouse competed for the same ground, and then Woods entered the fight. He had no resources, no backing, no name recognition. Yet he won. Patent number 373,915. The synchronous multiplex railway telegraph, and it changed everything. This is what it actually did. A system that let moving trains communicate their position in real time. Before this invention, train dispatchers were essentially guessing. Two trains on the same track had no way to warn each other. Collisions were not rare events. They were scheduled tragedies waiting for a date. Woods solved that problem in 1887. Station operators knew where every train was, in something close to real time. Railway companies could reroute, warn, and redirect before disaster. The technology directly reduced collision rates on American rail lines. This was not a minor improvement on an existing system. Woods filed the patent in his own name, from his own workshop. Thomas Edison reviewed it. Then Edison filed a competing claim. His argument was co-invention, that he had developed something similar independently. Here is what the federal court found when it examined the evidence. Woods had developed the technology first. Edison appealed. The court ruled in Woods' favor again. Two separate federal rulings, same conclusion, same name on the patent. After the second loss, Edison's team reportedly made Woods an offer. A senior position at Edison Electric, steady salary, institutional support. Woods turned it down. He walked back to his rented workshop and kept filing patents. That decision tells you something specific about who Granville Woods was. He was not chasing Edison's approval. He was chasing the work. By the early 1890s, major railway companies were using his technology. American Bell Telephone Company licensed an earlier Woods patent, a recognition he'd fought hard to secure. His name was appearing in trade publications alongside the biggest names in the field. For a brief window, the record was accurate. His contributions were attributed to him in print, with patent numbers attached. The courtroom in Cincinnati had been warm and wood-paneled, smelling of dust and ink. 12 men decided that morning that the patent belonged to the man who invented it. Woods left that room as the documented inventor of a technology millions depended on. Here is where it turns. The railway industry was consolidating fast in the 1890s. Large companies were absorbing smaller operators at a pace that rewrote the map. Patents were being bundled, licensed, and reassigned in deals that favored the powerful. Woods sold several of his patents to larger companies to stay financially solvent. Each sale moved his name one step further from the technology he created. It carried the brand of whoever held the license. A white inventor who sold a patent often stayed connected to the industry around it. He had colleagues, club memberships, professional societies that kept his name in circulation. Woods had none of those networks. The American Institute of Electrical Engineers did not include black members in this period. Professional directories simply erased him from the record. Your name survives in history through institutions that repeat it. Woods had the patents, the court victories, the technical record. The institutions that carry names forward were not built to carry his. By 1907, When he filed his last patent, the momentum had shifted. Financial pressure had mounted across 2 decades of independent work. The man who defeated Edison twice was running out of runway, and the record was already starting to forget. The erasure did not happen all at once. It happened in stages, each one harder to see than the last. Here is the part that takes a minute to absorb. Woods's patents were not ignored because nobody noticed them. The American electrical industry in the 1890s ran on patents. Whoever held the key patents controlled the system beneath everything. Railways, streetcars, telegraph lines, all of it anchored to intellectual property. A black man in Cincinnati held patents that sat at the center of that system. That was not a situation the industry was built to accommodate. So the question became practical, not philosophical. How do you erase a man's name without erasing what he built? You buy it. Woods needed cash to keep his workshop running. Independent inventors in the 1890s operated on thin margins. Filing a patent cost money. Defending it in court cost more. 2 federal victories over Edison had not made Woods wealthy. They had made him credible, but credibility does not pay for wire and machinery. He sat at that wooden table with diagrams that were worth more than his bank balance. Large companies came with offers, and the offers were real money. Each sale was rational in the moment and costly across the decade. His name appeared on the original filing, buried in a document few people would ever see. The company's name appeared on everything the technology touched going forward. This is where it gets worse. The companies that bought his patents were not neutral actors in a market. They were the same companies lobbying against black workers in other contexts. They operated under the rules of a racially segregated economy. An economy where black inventors had no professional societies to protect their legacy, where trade publications did not feature their portraits or profile their careers, where the story of an invention was told by whoever owned the printing press. In 1890, Woods filed patent number 428,459. Historians who study urban system believe this patent contributed to the technical groundwork for electrified city rail systems. New York City's subway, which opened in 1904, relied on electrified rail system. 27 million people a year would eventually ride that system. His name did not appear in the dedication ceremonies. It did not appear in the engineering tributes. The newspapers ignored his achievement entirely. Now think about how a name actually survives in history. It is not through justice, and it is not through talent alone. It is through repetition by institutions that have reasons to repeat it. Universities teach names their donors recognize. What institution had a reason to repeat Granville Woods' name? The railway companies that bought his work had every reason not to. Acknowledging him had legal implications and social implications that made executives uncomfortable. So they chose the cleaner story. The cleaner story was Edison. Edison had lost twice in federal court on this specific technology. But Edison had something Woods did not. Menlo Park hummed. Journalists called it a cathedral, and he claimed it too. Every headline bent toward him, his name synonymous with the future. Societies, patents, alliances, he'd woven himself into the industry's spine. Years of careful cultivation and reputation now moved like a machine. Woods had 45 patents and a rented workshop. The contrast was not accidental, it was structural. But that is still not the most specific part of what happened. The most specific part involves a calculation that people in power made consciously. Patent attorneys in the 1890s knew exactly whose names appeared on which filings. When companies bundled patents for licensing, they made choices about attribution. They wrote promotional materials that described the technology's origins. Those materials referenced Edison regularly. They referenced Woods almost never. Not because his name was unknown to the people writing them, because including it created questions they did not want to answer. Questions about who actually built the foundations of American electrical transit. Questions about what that meant for the industry's self-image. And then there was a second mechanism, quieter and more durable than the first. History rewrote itself without him. Engineering schools taught the history of their field alongside its technical content. Woods remained absent from every syllabus, every lecture hall, every roll call. Each generation of engineers graduated without encountering him. Each generation then wrote the next round of textbooks without including him. The gap between his patent dates and his absence from those books is not a mystery. It is a paper trail through every institution that touched electrical engineering education. The system was working exactly as its architects intended. The diagrams he drew in that cold workshop still exist in the Federal Patent Archive. Patent numbers attached, dates intact, his signature on each page. The wire he bent by hand, the circuits he designed from first principles, all of it is there. The archive kept the evidence. The institutions built to teach it chose something else. Woods filed his last patent in 1907, the year financial pressure finally won. He died in New York City in 1910, with no institutional backing behind him. He was 53 years old. No university named a building after him. No professional society issued a memorial statement. The American Institute of Electrical Engineers, which had excluded him in life, said nothing at his death. The trade publications that had briefly printed his name moved on without a single obituary. The tools disappeared. The patents stayed. The name went quiet. History forgot to listen. Now consider who filled that quiet. Edison died in 1931, and the tributes ran for weeks. President Herbert Hoover asked Americans to dim their lights the night of the funeral. A nation mourned a man the federal courts had ruled against on Woods' specific technology. That contrast is not coincidence. It is the record being rewritten in real time. By the 1940s, electrical engineering textbooks had settled into a fixed story. Edison, Tesla, Westinghouse. 3 names, 1 narrative. The narrative was clean, the narrative was repeatable, and the narrative was incomplete. American academic institutions had ignored Granville Woods entirely since before 1960. Not as a footnote, not in a sidebar, not in a suggested reading list. Absent, fully, across an entire generation of trained engineers. Those engineers graduated and went to work for the companies that ran on his patents. They maintained system built on his designs without knowing his name. The system did not need to lie about Woods. It just needed to stay quiet. Quiet is cheaper than lying. Quiet requires no co-conspirators. Quiet maintains itself. The thing nobody mentions is how self-sustaining an erasure becomes, how it devours itself after 20 years. By the time a historian in 1950 wanted to write about Woods, the trail was thin. The companies that acquired his patents merged, rebranded, and buried his legacy. The original licensing agreements sat in corporate archives that were not public. The reporters who had documented his work in the 1890s were gone. The colleagues he might have had were never built into the formal record. Reconstruction was not just a political event. It also shaped which names got preserved. Woods was inventing at the exact moment those choices were being made. And the choices were made without him at the table. New York City's transit authority today serves roughly 3.5 million riders each weekday. 3.5 million people on electrified urban rail, most of them unaware of the technical foundations beneath them. Woods filed his overhead electric conductor patent in 1890, 14 years before the subway opened. Engineering historians have traced the groundwork for electrified urban transit through patent filings of that era. Whose name appears in the Transit Authority's official history of innovation? The answer to that question tells you more about institutional memory than any textbook could. General Electric absorbed several patents connected to the electrical railway industry during the 1890s. American Bell Telephone had already claimed an earlier Woods patent before consolidation swallowed it whole. Westinghouse Electric built its urban transit business in the same technical space Woods had pioneered. These were not neutral beneficiaries. They were companies with public relations departments and historians on staff. Those historians wrote the industry's origin stories and chose which names anchored them. Not one of those corporate histories published before 1980 gave Woods a chapter. Some did not give him a sentence. The same companies that paid for his patents paid writers to tell the story without him in it. That is not interpretation. That is the sequence of events in the public record. The railway telegraph system operating today runs on his patents but carries other names on the lobby walls. By the 1970s, a handful of scholars started pulling the archive back open. They found the patents. They found the court records from the Edison rulings. They found the dates. What they found was a case so well documented, it required no speculation. Every critical date, every patent number, every court decision preserved in federal files intact. 2 federal courts had ruled for Woods over Edison. The dates were clear. The signatures were clear. And yet, it took 60 years before anyone dared write his name in print again. Print again. 60 years. 2 generations of engineers. Millions of writers. 1 missing name. The scholars who rediscovered him were writing against a current that had been running for decades. Curriculum committees had approved textbooks without him. Those textbooks had trained the next committee. Each round made the absence feel more normal, more settled, more like the actual history. That is the mechanism. Not a single decision. 100 small decisions, each one borrowing authority from the last. In 2023, a study of American engineering curricula found that Black inventors before 1950 remain largely absent from standard course materials. The study surveyed programs at 40 universities across the country. Woods was not among the inventors regularly taught in introductory electrical engineering courses. Not in every program. Not universally, but in enough of them to call it a pattern. Every engineer who graduated without knowing Woods's work graduated with an incomplete map of their field. They understood the technology, but they did not understand where it came from or who built it first. That incomplete map shapes what they believe is possible, who they think belongs in the field, and why. The gap in the curriculum is not just historical. It is an active instruction in who counts. His code is still on in every image the archive preserved from his workshop years. The wire he bent by hand, those diagrams spread across a wooden table they built the modern world. All of it still sits in the Federal Patent Archive, exactly where he left it. His name is on the cover of each filing, his signature underneath, his dates confirmed by the federal government itself. The archive did not forget him. The institutions built to teach the archive chose something else, and that choice is still being made in curriculum committees, in corporate histories, in the names on lobby walls. Every year a student graduates without his name is another year that choice gets made again. The story of Granville Taylor Woods was never an accident of forgetting.